Welcome back to the channel. My name is Adam Smith, and today I'm excited to continue the showcase for the Huntress AD 1492. If you haven't checked out my game unboxing or the how to set up video I've already released, I'll put the entire showcase in a link in the top right hand corner right now. Now, if you've already checked out the how to set up video, you know we're at the point of revealing this small plot card S001, and that's because whenever a small plot card is face down and has a red arrow in the bottom right hand corner, and it's in the same map location as the Hunter's mark, you immediately reveal the small plot card. The card tells us we haven't seen anything but woods for many hours now. Mighty moss-covered trees lean over the road. We're supposed to resolve Quest 1. When you're told to resolve a quest, you'll always find it inside the Tome of Quests. On the second page of the booklet, you'll find Tutorial Quest 1 Forest, and you'll see the introduction there. We'll certainly read this in just a moment. And other sections like Deployment, Quest Goal, and Special Rules will provide additional information that you need to know going into your quest. You'll also see the victory and defeat conditions on the side, and as you'll see from the defeat side of the equation, even if you fail, you're going to fail forward. But in saying that, the outcomes of what will happen if you fail versus if you succeed are different. The forest grows denser and the sun darkens behind a veil of cloud. Your morale begins to weaken. It's as if your hearts have been gripped by some invisible shadow. The mist is everywhere these days, but here, barely visible and wraith-like among the trees, it puts you on edge. It's not the impenetrable miasma raved about by wandering priests and fear-stricken travelers, but even so, the mist is always a presage of danger. Your knuckles whiten on the hilt of your weapon. You can just make out the lithe shadows low in the trees. A flurry of gnashing teeth, matted fur, and shining yellow eyes surges towards you through the underbrush. Wolves, may the gods protect you. Now let's quickly go over two things about the small plot cards that you might see as you go through your journey. First off, on the front side of the card, you might see an option with the exclamation mark icon on the front next to a particular narrative option. So if you actually find this option, it means that it's necessary to complete the main quest. Now on the opposite side of this card, you'll want to take note of the back of the plot card because the stripe that's on it, the color actually denotes whether it's part of the main plot or not. So if you see a red stripe, this one is blue. If it's red, it's part of the main plot. Now, as you start finding more red-striped small plot cards, again, that tie to the main plot, you might also come across cards that have the hourglass symbol on them, and that's going to tell you with a numerical value how many days you have before that card needs to be revealed. In other words, it ties to the main plot, which you need to complete within 60 days. Now that we know we have a quest at this location right here, we're going to take this entire thing out of the equation for now. We'll move it off to the side and bring in the Tome of Maps. Now, speaking of maps, before we bring that book into the equation, I do want to show you this fold-out map that comes as part of the game. It is double-sided. The map looks great on both sides, and you'll certainly be referencing this throughout your journey. This, my friends, is the Tome of Maps, a coil-bound book full of a number of quest locations you'll be exploring throughout your journey in the game, and we're on quest number 1, which you can see up in the top left-hand corner. With your map now on the table, you go back to the deployment section in the Tome of Quests for the quest that you're on, and you'll find it right here. In this case, it says 4 wolves are coming in. We knew there was wolves based on the narrative text, but we didn't know how many. We now know it's 4, but because I'm controlling 2 heroes, only 2 wolves are actually coming in. If I was controlling 3 heroes, 3 wolves would come in. 4 is 4 wolves. Now, if you look back at the Tome of Quests, you'll see the deployment section says 4 wolves, but if you're controlling 2 characters, there's only 2 wolves that will come in. If you're controlling 3 characters, it's 3 wolves. So we go to the enemy card deck and find the exact match in terms of artwork that you can even see on the map itself. Now, this card will tell you all the information you need to know about the wolves, and we'll go over it in a little bit, but underneath the title, you'll notice in very small fine print, A4-6. Inside the enemy card's deck, which look like this on the back, you're going to easily match up the artwork. You can also reference the letter number combination going on in the top right-hand corner. Again, A4-6. You're going to have, depending on the enemy, from 3 to 10 cards. So this enemy only has 3, but some will have up to 10. Simply give them a shuffle, place them nearby, and also grab the dice, as you'll certainly need them going into combat. Now, as the narrative told us, we were heading through the forest and the mist was starting to encroach on us, and we could also tell from the sounds in the forest that wolves were approaching, and we then saw them. So we have a number of spawn locations for wolves, but before we place them out, we got to bring our heroes into the equation. Now, as you'll see across 3 areas on the map, we can position our heroes in any of those 3 areas, and we could even have them both inside the same area so long as there's space to actually place them. Now, before I place my heroes, the next thing that'll happen right after that is, of course, the enemies coming into the map itself. So it's a good idea to think about where they're going to be coming in at. Now, as you can see, there's multiple spawn locations across the map here, and each of them have a number of pips beside the actual artwork that'll tell you exactly where things will spawn based on the number of characters currently in play. So for example, on the south side of the map, we'll see 2 spawn locations, but one is only going to spawn if we're controlling 4 characters, whereas this one's going to spawn if we're controlling 4, 3, or 2. So we know with 2 characters being controlled right now, we definitely have a wolf coming in right there. Now up top, the 2 spawns are further apart, and this one on the left here is going to have a wolf come in as it has 2 pips, 3, and 4. So basically, no matter what kind of character count you have across your party, you're going to see a wolf there, whereas over here, you're only going to see it at 3 and 4 player count, so we will not be having a wolf over there. So in total, 2 are coming out just like was told inside the Tome of Quests. So now we have an appreciation for where these enemies are coming from. Again, just like the narrative said, they're coming from the woods through the mist. So they're coming from over here and over here. So in terms of position, we could actually put ourselves here and maybe go right after the wolf immediately, giving us some time before the other one comes over. Or we could put ourselves dead center and be 2 spaces away from any direction of either the wolves. Or we could kind of lean ourselves towards this one over here. And I'm actually thinking that I'm going to kind of head over to this side. We're going to place both characters in this location. As we were traveling along the road, we heard the wolves, and this one is the one we're focused on. And the wolves appear from the woods. Now that we got the map set up, let's talk about the quest goal and find out exactly what we need to do to get a victory. In the Tome of Quests, it states the goal is to defeat all enemies by the end of round 6, and there's also no special rules with this one. You'll see a round tracker in the very top of the map, so we place our marker in the first position. That'll do it for the quest setup. Let's now dig into the action and take down these wolves. Let's talk about how quests work. We have an overall quest goal, which we already know. We know things are broken down into rounds, and inside of a round, heroes are going to play their turns performing 2 actions, while the enemies are going to resolve their turns performing 1 action. A round is broken into 3 separate steps. The first is to draw your action cards. That only happens for the heroes. The second step, you determine the order. In other words, who's going first, who's going next between the heroes and the enemies. And then, based on that determination of order, you then go ahead and resolve hero and enemy turns. Now let's get into drawing our action cards for our heroes. Now, as part of the tutorial, it tells us to just go ahead and select 5 out of the 10 cards from the decks and put them into your hands, but I'm going to go more random, which is the typical way you're going to experience the game as you get outside the tutorial. We'll go ahead and shuffle both those decks and draw 5 cards at random for each. Elena's drawn up these 5 cards right here, and it's worth noting you might see duplicates in this very first tutorial, and that's because, again, out of the 20 cards that you will have as you get further into gameplay, you right now only have 10 to draw from, and there are repeats throughout the deck to start things off. But don't worry, as you get further into the experience, that is going to open up quite a bit, and you're also not locked to what you have in your hand for cards. You can also do things outside of the cards as well. And here's a look at the cards for Wilhelm. He's got quick blows, precise blow, another precise blow, assault, and draw attention. Now you'll see a top section here is for action. The bottom section here is a reaction. It says during the enemy turn, enemy performing an attack on your space must target you instead of your ally. So you can use cards as reactions rather than just an action, providing additional benefits to use across the cards. Now, of course, we're drawing 5 cards for the very first round because we're starting things off, but in every subsequent round at the very beginning going forward, we'll be drawing up to ensure that every hero goes into a round with 5 cards. And of course, as you'll be moving through cards during gameplay, your card pile will eventually deplete for your heroes, which is that deck, for example, for Wilhelm way up there in the top left-hand corner face down. When that card pile disappears because you've drawn cards up into your hand, you will have a discard pile sitting off to the side for him, and that discard pile will be shuffled and create your brand new deck. Let's move on to step number 2 of a round, which is determining the order. And we do this by taking a look at the perception stat of our characters, the heroes, as well as the enemies. The perception stat is located right here. It looks like an eye icon. And you can see for my character here, Wilhelm does not have any perception, sitting at 0 presently. Now, Elena's perception is actually quite good. You can see here, looking across the row at the very top, you'll see 2. So we are currently at a perception value of 2 for her. But you'll also notice on the wolf card, the perception value is also 2. Determination order is based on the highest perception value, as you know, and seeing as we have a hero and an enemy that both have the exact same perception, the hero gets to choose whether they'd like to go first or they can delay their turn to let the wolf go in advance. There might be a strategic reason you might want to do this, but in this case, I want to have her go first. So Elena's going to be going first. She gets to choose up to 2 actions on her turn if she wishes. She has 2 options for performing an action. She can choose any action card from her hand of the 5 cards she drew up earlier, or she can perform any basic action. Now, the basic actions were what I was talking about earlier on when I said that you don't have to use a card in order to do an action. So strategically, if I don't want to use a card or I don't have a card that benefits me in this current situation, a basic action can be taken, and that allows you one of 4 different options. You either have the ability to move 1 space in any direction. You can move diagonally or orthogonally as long as your miniature can actually get inside of the area it's moving inside of. You can also choose to attack for 1 from range. So again, 1 is melee there, 1 is range, and the other is interacting. But as you can tell from the options, basic actions are helpful, but they're not as good as the cards you'll have in your hand, like this one. This seems like a great one to use right now. It's called Lookout. Thematically, it definitely ties into the fact the wolves are coming into the woods, and it gives us an attack 3 from range. When she makes her ranged attack, she'll be using a weapon, and it's going to be a sling in this case. She has a range here of 1 to 2. So in other words, it has to be at least 1 or 2 spaces away. How you draw line of sight is very simple. It's from the center of the area you're in to the center of where the enemy area is, and the only thing that will block it is walls. So in this case, we're in open forest right now. There's no walls blocking anything that's denoted on this map, so we definitely have line of sight right now. Now looking across the bottom of the weapon we'll be using, we got a number of different icons here. The one on the far left is the agility icon with an X on it, meaning you have to reference your character's dashboard, which we will do in just a moment, but I'll give you a heads up that the agility for her is currently at 1. Next to it is 2 dice. We need 2 dice to be a part of this equation when we're making the attack. The next icon to the right has a target with an arrow hitting it, and it shows a 0 on the sling. That is known as the hit modifier. That's going to modify the actual hit value on the die roll. So we'll talk more about that later on when it actually applies, but right now it's 0, so there's no modification whatsoever. And as I talked about already, the last one is range, which is 1 to 2. So when making a ranged attack, you'll always be using a card, as there's no basic action that allows for a ranged attack. And then you'll choose your weapon. Then you'll make sure that you have line of sight and range to the actual enemy you're targeting while you select that enemy. And then you gather your dice and make the roll. Let's go ahead and chuck these dice and see how many hits we can get on this wolf. Would be pretty nice if we can get a couple on there, but this wolf does have a health value as shown on the card on the far left-hand side, shows a 3 health. So we're going to need quite a bit of dice to make this happen, but I'll show you how that could potentially happen as we go. Now, we got lucky and fortunate here because we got 2 3s. Now, when you're rolling, you're looking at the attack value, which is right next to what you played on your card, which is a 3. So anything that meets 3 or is below on the dice is considered a hit. But first, let's talk about what actually happened. So we got 2 hits here, and these 2 hits now go against the defense of the wolf. So we got 2 hits off the dice, but we also were using the sling, which adds in the agility, and agility is going to be based on the value of your agility stat, and for her, that's going to be 1, which means we add 1 into the 2 we already have, which is a total of 3. Now we reference the enemy card, which has icons on it we haven't gone over yet, but we're going to right now. So first off, on the far left, we talked about this before, 3 health. Next up is perception at 2. Again, determines what order that wolf is going to activate in, and it's for the group of wolves. And then after that, we got defensive icons. This is what matters right now. So you can see, because we're making a ranged attack, we're looking at the one with the arrow in the center, which shows 0. But regardless, if it was melee or magic, either way across the board, 0 defense for this wolf, which means the 3 hits that go against this wolf, there's nothing defensively that's going to stop it. If, for instance, there was a 1 on this arrow defense here for ranged attacks, then of the 3 that go towards the wolf, 1 would be blocked and 2 would get through. But as there's no defense, the wolf is completely killed because it reaches its 3 health just like that. So Elena knows what she's doing. That arrow hits and takes the wolf out in 1 shot. That was an awesome first combat, but now let's talk about a hypothetical situation that might have changed how things were resolved if the dice had to behave differently. Now, let's say when rolling these dice, instead of getting a 3 and a 3, we actually got a 3 and a 1. What does that mean? Well, that's considered a critical hit. And this game has exploding dice. In other words, what I mean by that is when you roll this result, you automatically get to roll another die into the equation. And yes, if you roll another die into the equation and you land another critical success, you just keep rolling. So essentially, you can have an epic shot that absolutely just continues to crit and hit that enemy, which can be extremely satisfying. But it's worth mentioning, not only do the heroes get to take advantage of that, the enemies do as well. Now, another situation to watch out for with ranged attacks is that you cannot target another enemy with range if you're currently engaged with an enemy that's in your space. So if you have an enemy in your space, the individuals in that space are considered to be engaged and cannot just go shooting off into a different direction to take out a different enemy. You have to clear that space out so you can focus on the enemy at a distance. Now, in this case, both of my heroes are very much focused on the final wolf up there in the top left. Now, as I mentioned prior, the heroes get 2 actions every time they activate, so I still have 1 action left to spend. I don't have to use it if I don't want to, and strategically, it really doesn't make too much sense to go moving closer to the wolf. Normally, if I was playing this off camera, what I would do is actually step further back and try to stay away from the wolf, as I know that wolf can move much faster than I can potentially move in some situations. Again, some of the cards that I have will allow me to leap and move quite quickly, but at the same time, just getting further back keeps me out of harm's way. But as I'm trying to show you guys how this game flows and operates, I'm going to do something a little bit silly and actually have my character move a little closer to the wolf so the wolf actually has a higher chance of being able to engage us, so you can see how the enemies coming at us plays out. Now, a basic action will allow me to move just 1 space, but instead I'll go ahead and discard this card for the very top. I can either move or do a parting leap in order to go 2 positions. So I'm going to have her move from where she's at, and again, she can move orthogonal or diagonal. She's going to get real close to the wolf. And once again, I wouldn't normally recommend this, but I'm doing this for the sake of showing you guys how the wolves attack us. Now, that's going to resolve the 2 actions I want to do with this character, but first let's talk about another hypothetical situation. Let's say, hypothetically, my character was here, and for some weird reason, there was an enemy in my space, and I was trying to do this right here. Now, you would not be able to do a regular move at all if you are engaged with an enemy, if there's an enemy in your space. But what you can do is what's known as a parting leap, and that's exactly what that is. In this case, what you do is you would try to get out of the space, but you take an attack for it from the strongest strength character of an enemy in your space. So if there's multiple enemies in there, whoever has the strongest strength is the one that's going to be actually attacking you as you try to get out of there. So the leap will allow you to do so. The only 3 things you can do when you're engaged with an enemy is a melee attack, a magic attack, or that parting leap. That's all you can do. That's going to do it for Elena's turn. We move over to the wolves now, but there's only 1 wolf in play at this point. But it is worth mentioning, when the enemy's turn comes around, you again are going to reference the enemy card for any information you need to know. But more importantly, you're going to draw off the top of the enemy action deck to determine what that group of enemies is going to do. So if we had multiple wolves, every wolf is going to be referencing the same card draw. You're not going to be drawing a card for every single wolf that you're activating. In this case, there's only 1 anyway, so let's go ahead and draw the top card off. After revealing the top card of the deck, we now check to see who is the closest hero to the enemy. When you reveal the action card for the enemy, you always resolve from top to bottom. It's attempting to try and do something on this card. You'll see it's broken, in this case, into 2 sections. The top section says attack 3, but in very small font in red to the left, it shows a 0, which means it's only going to attack 3 if the target of its attack, the closest hero next to it, is going to be in the same space, because that's what 0 means in terms of range. So if I was in this space, it would go ahead and do the attack 3, but I am not. I'm actually 1 away, and that falls into the second thing it will attempt to try and do, which is going to complete that by going ahead and moving 2 to get closer to me and then attacking me for 3. So the wolf's going to move into my space, and I'm now considered engaged. No matter what enemy you face, the information you need to know is in the bottom left-hand corner. You're going to see a sword icon denoting this thing is coming at you from melee. It wants to get up close and personal and attack you. And typically melee attacks in almost all cases, unless there's something I haven't seen yet, is going to be the strength icon. That's the next icon you can see with the one beside it, the hand icon. That one with the hand clenched is strength. So that's going to add 1 strength to the hits that this thing will dole out. So in other words, when the wolf goes ahead and rolls, that strength will be be added into the equation of 1. Now you'll remember when I did my ranged attack with Elena earlier, it used agility because ranged attacks are always typically tied to agility, whereas melee is typically tied to strength. Thematically just makes a lot of sense. Now for the wolf here, he's getting 2 dice into the equation to throw at me. So let's go ahead and make the attack, and the value is 3, so 3 or less is considered a hit. Also keep an eye on the enemy card in the center there. There's no special abilities in this case for the wolf, but there certainly will be on tougher enemies later in the game. Now before we go ahead with the roll, I want to show you some reaction cards in her hand because these cards are always beneficial to check out throughout the entirety of gameplay as it can be triggered at different times for the reaction. So the reaction here is the enemy turn. It says it would allow us to do an attack 1, a melee 1, or attack 2 from melee. If using the light trait, it would be a free action, and it shows at the bottom here, play on yourself before or after any enemy activity. So this is something we could actually use. Now it's worth mentioning that she doesn't have any melee weapons, and whenever you make an attack with your hero, if you do not have a weapon to add into the fray, you simply just don't gain the additional benefits that a weapon provides. You're essentially thematically using your fists. So she absolutely can, just like using a basic action, allowing her to attack 1 from melee. Using her fist, she could go ahead and use this card if she wants, but she really likes to heal 2 on top, so we'll hold on to it for now. Now, other cards she's got in hand actually only pertain to her turn, but they actually provide some interesting benefits. Now the game comes with a number of really handy reference cards you'll want to have nearby as you're playing through the game so you don't have to dig inside the rulebook. It has full breakdown of the traits here. For instance, the one we just talked about was light. It even says right here, this trait has no special effect, but may provide bonuses in connection with certain action cards. Like we just saw, there's all kinds of other things you can find for traits like reloading, burning, mobilization, stun, mighty, poison, just to name a few. And just above that, you'll find the terrain features. We talked about this earlier when we were talking about line of sight, because walls can block line of sight. You can see that mentioned right up there. So again, it goes through all the different things you're going to run into. So you'll see you'll eventually get into situations where there's difficult terrain, whether it's rough, water, or swamp. You'll have cards that will help you to actually traverse through difficult terrain more easily. You have things like hiding terrain, finding things, bottlenecks, vantage points. So as the maps progress, they'll become a lot more interesting. And I told you this reference sheet was extremely handy. Yes, you're getting an iconography reference sheet inside the box as well, which really makes it easy to quickly reference what these icons mean at any given time across all aspects of gameplay, whether it's the equipment, the actions, the traits, dice, components, enemies. You're going to find exactly what you're looking for your icons until eventually this becomes second nature and you no longer need this. There's also a morale section at the very bottom we'll take a quick peek at. Morale is tracked on the left-hand side of each of the character dashboards, and you can spend them in a variety of ways. 3 ways right here primarily. When performing a test, you can spend 1 morale to add 1 to the test result. The decision can be made after rolling the dice as well, so you can will yourself into a success. You have the second option here. You can perform an attack, and then after rolling to hit, the hero can spend a morale to increase their strength if it's melee, agility if it's range, and knowledge if it's magic by 1. That can certainly be beneficial if you're really trying to get that extra hit to take down an enemy. And then you have the third one here. When performing a move, a hero can spend a morale to increase their move by 1. Again, strategically getting you into position where you can do the most effective damage in most cases or interact with something. Hopefully that bunny trail was worthwhile, showing you a number of different things to tie into some of the aspects we've already covered to this point and beyond as we go further into the playthrough here. We're going to roll the dice now for the wolf attacking our hero, and 3 and lower is going to be considered a hit here. Let's see what happens. A 1 and the swords icon. Now this couldn't have turned out any better because this is the golden rule of the game. We've already talked about how 1s will always be a crit for enemies and for heroes. Well, this is a 6 result right here, and this is considered a miss. So we'll continue onwards with the critical success that the wolf just landed. We're going to roll another die into the fray and hope to not see another 1. We got a 5 this time. That is well outside of the attack of 3, so that is not going to do any damage. But this one will, plus the 1 that comes from the card for the wolf, which is its strength. So that's going to be 2 total. So 2 hits coming from the wolf. We look across the equipment for our character to see if there's anything defensively that can help us, but there isn't. I currently have 0 defense, and so with 7 health, we are knocked down to 5 on the track. That's going to resolve the wolf's attack against our hero, and that finishes off the wolves as there's only 1 left in play. We now move to Wilhelm. Now, before we move on, let's talk about the last thing on the card that did not resolve and won't be resolving, but you might be wondering what it's all about. You'll see the card was broken into 2 sections, as each has a range determination. We knew the top one was not going to resolve, but the bottom one did. So when you're looking across this entire thing, the first thing you do is look at the top half before the arrow pointing down, and it says move 2 and then attack 3. So what this means is if the wolf can move 2 and make the attack, then it's going to do so. If it cannot move 2 and do the attack, instead, it's going to just move 3. In this case, it was super easy for the wolf to get close to me because I purposely put myself much closer. If I had have actually left myself where I was at and didn't move at all, the wolf would have just moved 3 and come all the way up to where Wilhelm is, and that would have been it. No attack. Speaking of Wilhelm, it's his turn. He's 2 spaces away from the wolf, and he certainly wants to get up close and personal. Now here's a look inside the hand of Wilhelm. He's got a lot of attack cards, but his movement is capped at 1 across all the cards I'm looking at. So the thing I could do, and this even includes the basic actions, which have a movement of 1 at the maximum, what you can do, as I mentioned earlier, is use your morale, dropping your morale by 1, spending it in order to get an additional point of movement, which allow him in 1 action to do 2 points of movement to get into the same space, and then we can go ahead and do an attack. But here is the kicker. Now, as you know, the morale track's on the left-hand side of the character dashboard. The top section of that, which is where my cube sits, currently at the very bottom of that positive side, is the good side of the morale. Bad side of the morale in red. If I was to go ahead and spend morale right now to get that additional point of movement to be really efficient with 1 action and get 2 movement so I could make an attack, I would move the cube down to that first red position. And when I do this, my strength, agility, knowledge, and perception stats are all going to drop by 1 when resolving quests, which is exactly what I'm inside of right now, so it has immediate negative impact. Now, of course, if I was higher up the morale track and I chose to spend 1, it wouldn't be so bad, but in this case, I'm right teetering on the edge of things going into the negatives. Now, if you were to push it even harder with spending morale, say you got your cube down to that final red position, at this point, not only would that 1 hit against strength, agility, knowledge, and perception be happening during quests, but it also would be happening during all other tests between quests, which makes it even worse for you. And if a hero ever has their cube in the final morale space and has to move the morale down 1 more, instead you lose a health. So morale is awesome when you have some to spare in order to be more efficient and productive on your turn, but if you push it too much, you're going to get yourself into a situation you might not be able to get yourself out of quite quickly. So back to Wilhelm's turn, I'm simply just going to go ahead and use 2 basic actions to move 1 each time, getting me into the same space as everybody else, but not able to make any attacks because I don't want to spend any morale to push myself any further. That's going to complete round number 1. Let's move the round tracker to round 2. First up, round number 2, as we know, is to draw up to 5 cards. Wilhelm already has 5 cards, so he's good to go. Elena's going to go ahead and draw 2. She ends up getting another lookout card, as well as years of practice. All heroes have 5 cards in hand. We're now going to determine the order, which will be the same as the last round. Elena is going to go first, and she has lots of cards about range because that is her focus. She can do unarmed melee attacks if she wants to, but I'd rather attack from range to see if she can take something out. Now, what I'm going to do is show you how the parting leap can work. So I have a number of cards I just showed you on screen for her, but they're tied to some attacks. In other words, the attack's happening first, and then afterwards there's a move or parting leap. So you're going to be resolving those cards that have an and symbol in between them in order. So they're not really going to work out right now because I'm engaged in the same space, and as a ranged attack, I can't be in the same space as the enemy. So I need to do a parting leap to get unengaged with the enemy. But as I do, I would typically take an attack from the enemy if it was just me and the enemy in the space. But when the heroes outnumber the enemies there is no attack against us. Now, another thing to note about Parting Leap is you can use an action card from your hand that specifically mentions Parting Leap on it, or instead, you can actually just do a basic action, which is a move 1, and convert it into a Parting Leap 1. You're allowed to do that with a basic action. Again, if I do this right now, I don't have to worry about the attack from the wolf because we're outnumbering the wolf currently, so we're going to have her step back. She's going to choose to step back. She's going to use that second lookout card that she just drew going into this round for an attack 3. She's going to, of course, pull her sling into the equation, which again is going to provide her 2 dice. And she's got the 1 agility for her stat, which will add into the hits that she gets. So let's see how things go. She got herself a 5 and a critical. So that's awesome. So we got a miss on this one. It's not a miss, actually. Again, the wording on that's a little bit tough. Sometimes you want to say the word miss, but really this is what's considered a miss. This actually, here's another example just to clarify things even further. If I went ahead and got 5 and a 5, which are well above 3, it would, in your mind be a miss. But really what this means is the dice just didn't give you anything for hits, but you still get, even with these results, you still get the 1 agility to add in. So I would actually still get 1 hit in this case. But because I actually got a 5 and a 1, I've got a good chance here of actually getting some more hits because I get to roll thanks to the critical. Let's see what we get. And that right there is a miss. So this time around, I did not do as well as I did the very first time, only getting a successful 1 hit against this wolf. So we take the damage marker, which actually has a slit in it, and you'll also see other ones which represent 2 and 3, and you just go ahead and place it next to the wolf. It's now time for the wolf to attack, and the wolf draws an action card off the top, and because it's in the same space and engaged with Wilhelm, it's absolutely going to target Wilhelm in this case, so it's only looking at the first thing it can do top to bottom across the card, so it's going to do an attack 2 at range 0 to Wilhelm. Now let's say a hypothetical situation happened where both of my characters happen to be in the same space at the beginning of the turn. If that was the case, then the closest individual would be the same, so you'd have to resolve the tie by actually looking at what this wolf would be doing attack-wise, which would be a melee attack, and you gotta look at the defense for both of the characters. Whoever has the least defense is the one it's going to go after. But if that's a tie, and it is in this case, because if both of these characters were in this space and they have 0 defense for melee, then you have to go to the next thing, and that is going to be whoever acted earliest in the round. So in that case, it would be this individual right here if she happened to be in this space, but she's not, so Wilhelm is going to get this attack. So let's go ahead and roll some dice and see how many hits are coming over to Wilhelm. Let's see how it goes. Hopefully no 1s. Oh, we got a 1. So we got a miss and a 1. So an additional 1's going to come into the fray. And how many? Oh, there's another miss. Okay, so 1 is getting through, plus the 1 that's on the card, which is 2. And I don't have any defenses. So 2, 0, that means 2 hits coming through. But what I'm going to do is use a reaction card. When determining my defense, I can go ahead and use this melee defense to get a +1. It says a reaction on an enemy turn. I can use this card to play on myself when counting defense. So now I have a defense of 1, and that allows me to go ahead and block one of the 2 that is coming through to me, so I'm only taking 1 damage. All right, so that smack is going to hit our health, which is 7, dropping down to 6. Both of our characters have taken damage at this point. Wilhelm's only taken 1, and Lena has taken 2. Now this time, Wilhelm starts in the same space as this wolf and absolutely wants to do an attack right out of the gates for the first action. So he's going to go ahead and use Quick Blows as an attack 3. He's going to be using this weapon here, which is going to add his 1 strength into the fray, so he'll have 1 hit off of that. He's also got 1 die to roll, so we'll grab a single die versus the 2 that Elena has when she does her slingshot. And then this one does not have any modification to hits and also has to be in the same space as the enemy, which he currently is. So let's go ahead and roll the die and see how we do. I'm not happy with that result of 4 because I'm only going to get 1 hit out of this off the strength I have on my character stat. I'd rather push this die to a success, so we're going to go ahead and use Precise Blow for its reaction here on my turn. I can use this to reroll a die during a attack that's melee, so let's go ahead and reroll this die and hope for 3 or lower, and we got a miss. Now, it is worth mentioning that you can only use 1 reaction card for every action, so even though my character does have another Precise Blow card, and I'd love to go ahead and use the exact same thing to reroll it again, I cannot do it as I've already used a reaction on this action. Thanks to my strength stat, I'm still doing 1 damage to the wolf, upticking it by 1. For my second action, I'm going to use Precise Blow for the top, which is an attack 2. It doesn't have as much of a chance as the prior card to actually land a hit, but here's hoping. I also still have my strength stat, which should be able to push us through for 1. Let's see how we do off the die roll. And we got another miss, but that is still going to be okay because, again, even though the die is considered a miss, my strength stat is going to add 1 into the equation, and that is going to take out the wolf. And just like that, we've completed killing off all the wolves by round number 6. Back inside the Tome of Quests, it says, for the victory, the wolves slain, you pause to dress your wounds before stumbling back to the road. The sun is beginning to set, and you should have made it through this cursed forest hours ago. A fellow traveler at the last crossroads spoke of a cozy inn at the wood's edge, if you can just make it before nightfall. At this point, each hero is going to gain 1 experience. We're going to also place a plot card S002 face down on map location 06. The map board is back in place, and we'll go ahead and bump up XP on each of the tracks for the heroes. Small plot card 002 is going to be put on M06, right next to us to the east. Also, at the very end of every quest, if you have any unconscious characters, they're going to come back from being unconscious to 1 health. And that, my friends, will wrap up part number 1 of Quest 1, The Forest in the Huntress AD 1492. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions whatsoever about the gameplay that you just saw, and stay tuned as we continue the journey in this one in part 2 coming in the near future. Thanks again for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo!